Tyler Hero and Norman Powell are not working in this backcourt together. We've talked about it on the channel here time and time again, and we're going to take a deeper dive into that in this Thursday's episode of your Heat Latest on FanArc. Thanks again so much for joining us. I'm Sam Shapiro. If you haven't checked out our channel yet, drop a like on this video and, of course, subscribe. We're chasing 600 subs right now, so if you want to help me out in that mission, please click that subscribe button. And, of course, don't forget to like this video. We've got great daily content you don't want to miss all right here, Monday through Friday. Well, it's been talked about on the channel here for a number of months that not just defensively, but what the situation with Miami's backcourt is going to look like with Tyler Hero and Norman Powell when Hero is healthy. And now that that time has come, we're at least seeing some concerns that and I feel like many other Heat fans share with me in terms of what we were worried about seeing both of these guys on the floor at the same time. Granted, in the minutes that they have played recently, Hero obviously has come off the bench with Powell in the starting lineup, both kind of getting starter minutes, give or take. Hero getting around 20 or so, Powell around 25. But in a way that I feel like both players aren't necessarily on the court for the majority of the game together, both kind of rotating in and out a little bit in the grand scheme of things. There were points in Tuesday's matchup where they did share the floor together, and quite honestly, it was some of the ugliest basketball we have arguably seen from Miami over the course of this season. Not the most, just some of. Don't want to generalize that here, but I think Tuesday's game was a perfect example of why having Tyler Hero and Norman Powell on the court together is at least not going to work at this point in time. I don't want to completely rule that scenario out when it's all said and done, like indefinitely. But I do think that Tuesday's game was a prime example a prime example of when these two guys are playing in the lineup together, it can get real ugly real quick, especially from a defensive standpoint. And when these two guys can't get their shots to fall, it's an even uglier product really to watch. But what I want to get into, at least kind of harping on first, is the defensive liability that both of these players are, really. They're both pure bucket getters, pure scorers, but what they bring to the table offensively, they lack defensively, in the sense that they can pump out 20, 25, 30 points on their own respectively, but teams target them on the defensive end because they're easy to blow by. They're easy to score on, Tyler Hero and Norman Powell. And Tuesday's game, as I had mentioned in this episode, was a clear-cut example of how that is exactly the case. In the last 8 minutes of the game where Powell and Hero kind of shared the floor, their offensive rating was 50. Their defensive rating, 152.9. They gave up 17 points to the Milwaukee Bucks in that time frame, which at that point in the game, it was pretty close. So they pretty much handed the game away to Milwaukee, not to mention Miami not getting a field goal to fall in the last 6.5 minutes in the game. I had mentioned that in yesterday's episode as well, and I'm going to bring that up in the next segment a little bit more, but a negative 102.9 net rating to finish out that last 8 minutes with your second and third arguably best player on the team sharing the floor, that shouldn't be. That should not be the scenario. Am I surprised that it is? Just because defensively, the ability that these two players bring to the table, I'm not completely surprised. But it's absolutely ridiculous that you're letting the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis Antetokounmpo pretty much walk all over you like that in the fourth quarter. It's just stupid. It's fucking stupid. Defensively, I don't really know how the two of them being on the floor at the same time can fix the situation, because in the closing, roughly 3.5 minutes of this game where it was, Powell and Hero out on the floor with Mitchell, Adebayo, and Wiggins, I mean, the offensive rating was even worse. 22.2 defensive rating, 162.5 with a negative net rating of 140.3, plus minus negative 11. I mean, it's dog water numbers, if I'm being completely honest with you. So the defensive liability especially shows, and again, this is just, one example. This is just, the last 8 minutes of this game with the Milwaukee Bucks, obviously. In terms of the 158 minutes Powell and Hero have shared the floor all season, the overall defensive rating is 111, which is right around the same kind of number the team has been generating all year, but the offensive rating is slightly lower, which is kind of interesting. I believe it sits right around that 113, 114 ballpark for Miami. So, I mean, the defensive rating, the fact that it's not drastically different with or without them on the floor, definitely a positive thing, considering I'm sitting here talking about how both players can't play efficient defense. But this is not the only scenario where Miami has blown a game to a team that they were more than capable of beating. I mean, they just blew a game that should have been an easy win in the bag against Utah just recently this month. They lost that game, and now this game with Milwaukee, where your defensive rating is over 150. The game was so close that, in my opinion, this shouldn't even be a discussion we're having here on the channel. So I don't know how they can potentially solve this problem. I will get into that later a little bit more in this episode, but before I touch on to that in great detail, just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video over at MarsMed. Now, I'm 27, and over the last couple of years, I've started feeling a little bit different. Nothing dramatic or anything. I was still working out, or I'm still working out now, eating pretty clean, but my energy just wasn't the same. My focus dipped. My lifts felt a little bit more lethargic, but it just felt like I was working harder to get the results that used to come easier to me. I just remember thinking, what's going on? Then I started learning more about testosterone, and most guys know that it drops as you get older. Around 30, it starts declining around 1% a year. But what I didn't know is even if your body is producing testosterone a lot of it can get locked up by something called SHBG. So it's there, but you just can't really use it. It's like having money in your account, but your card keeps getting declined. Frustrating. That's why I started taking MarsMed. It's designed to help free up that locked testosterone so your body can actually use what it's already making. No needles, no synthetic stuff, just ingredients that support energy, focus, and strength. Now, for a limited time, our listeners get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. It's a perfect way to kick off the new year strong. That's mengotomars.com for 50% off and 3 free gifts at checkout after you purchase. They will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that our show sent you. If you've been feeling that subtle drop off too, it might be worth looking into MarsMed. So just going into the shot selection, at least from Tyler Hero and Norman Powell, I think at the beginning of the year, I liked Norman Powell's shot selection. I thought he was really nice off the catch and shoot, was really good off dribble, did a really good job creating space for himself. But this was also a scenario without Tyler Hero in the lineup. And I don't want to sit here and blame all the responsibility here on Tyler, because there were definitely a number of games over the course of this month where Powell shot close to 6 of 14, 6 of 15, and still managed to gut out 21 points in that matchup. But definitely different type of game he was playing in comparison to some of the 11 for 15 games, 10 for 15 games we had kind of seen him gut out in some of these matchups as well. When you look at certain scenarios with Tyler Hero, at least coming off the bench in this matchup with the Bucks, and that's not to say I'm excluding Powell from this either. Granted, he had one insane highlight baseline drive where he was kind of able to do that little Dr. J move where he was able to flip it up under the basket. But, I mean, he had multiple guys on the perimeter he could have kicked it out to for a wide open outside shot instead of trying to take a heavily contested under the rim type of layup. Although it was flashy and it was a cool shot, definitely had other guys around the perimeter that he could have utilized for an easier score there. Not saying that he shouldn't have, created the highlight play, but would have been a little bit easier in going about scoring that way and maybe also getting some more points up on the board in that fashion. But, I mean, there was one play at the beginning of the game. Tyler Hero got the ball in the paint. He's pretty much swarmed by the entire Milwaukee starting 5, and he's got, I believe it was Yakuchones and Jaquez, both wide open on the perimeter. And instead of kicking it out and letting Jaquez swing it to the rookie for an open corner three, decides to take a heavily contested floater in the paint. Then towards the end of the game, or the end of the third quarter rather, Hero had another opportunity where he could have kicked it out with time winding down in the quarter for an open shot, but instead dribbles around, takes a contested step back two, which ultimately didn't fall either. So it's shots kind of like that I would say that ultimately put Miami in the position that they're even letting Milwaukee break away late in these contests. Again, the fact that Miami was unable to score a field goal in the last 6 minutes and 30 seconds of play is unacceptable, considering that you've got your two best scorers in the lineup on the floor, and you, between the two of you, can't get a shot to fall. It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, in terms of what I think a solid solution could be in terms of this, I think Miami has kind of at least tried to plug and play here in terms of splitting up the minutes between the two or just trading one over the course of the summer. Well, they clearly didn't entertain that idea this month with the trade deadline on the loom and hopes that Miami would mock up some sort of package for Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously with Hero being the centerpiece along with Khalil Ware in that deal. But I think at this point, you've just got to see the best way to go about splitting up the minutes. I think I like having Norman Powell in the starting lineup and Hero coming off the bench in a sixth-man type of role. You know, obviously it's taken away from guys like Jaquez Jr., but Hero's still gutting out 15 to 20 points despite not shooting amazingly. And he's been in this position before where he's had to come off the bench, and he's thrived in it, being a former sixth man of the year. So personally, you know, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit in the last episode as well, where if you've got a night where Powell is, you know, not feeling too hot or his back's a little bit sore, then you can, at least you're in a position where you can rotate Hero into that starting spot. And if Powell can't even play, then shoot. I mean, you're in a great spot there, at least with another starter caliber guard that can play in, you know, either position, whether it's in the starting lineup or off the bench. But having these two shooting guards in this starting lineup together with another point guard clearly isn't working, and you've got to split up, I think, when you have one or the other piece in the rotation at a time, or you've got to figure out which one is going to go. Personally, I think that's an even harder choice because Norman Powell coming around 33 pretty soon. You don't know how much longer he's going to be able to keep this play up on a consistent level. He hasn't given any reason to think that it would, you know, the play would decline anytime soon, but there's definitely a little bit more of a stopwatch on when that play could, you know, ultimately end in comparison to Tyler Hero. Problem with Hero is he going to be able to play more than a dozen games next season where he will be able to be, where he can be that efficient? So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say in the comments, at least at this point in the season, because I know I had talked about Hero coming off the bench earlier in the year, and a lot of you dogged me for even pondering that as a question. Well, here's Miami plug and play in that experiment right now, and I'd love to know what you guys think and if that's what Miami needs to do to avoid making the play-in tournament for a fourth season in a row. That's going to do it for this Thursday's episode of your Heat Latest on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. We have a lot of great content here you don't want to miss all throughout the week, Monday through Friday. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Sam Shapiro. Have a good one.